Okay, let's dive right into this. Whenever we hear about artificial intelligence in healthcare, the picture we get is always this sleek, flawless future. We imagine these incredibly advanced vision language models, VLMs, instantly analyzing complex scans and firing off life-saving diagnoses with absolute pinpoint accuracy. It's a glamorous illusion, but there's a groundbreaking new research paper out called The Missing First Step, and it exposes a critical, often totally ignored blind spot in how we evaluate medical AI. Today, in this explainer, we are going to discover exactly why the world's most advanced AI models are currently tripping over the very first hurdle of medical diagnosis. So, we really have to ask ourselves, is AI actually ready to take over the emergency room tomorrow? I mean, the headlines certainly make it seem that way, right? Tech companies are constantly bragging about their models passing medical board exams or supposedly outperforming human specialists in diagnostic tests. It creates this huge wave of hype that AI is just fully prepared to seamlessly plug right into hospital systems and start assisting doctors immediately. But as we're about to uncover, passing a standardized test in a controlled lab is vastly different from surviving the sheer chaos of a real-world clinical workflow. To see what I mean, think about the expectation versus the messy reality. What we expect is a neat, perfectly isolated, high-resolution brain scan, maybe with a helpful little bounding box highlighting the exact area the AI needs to look at. That is the kind of pristine, spoon-fed data that these models are usually trained and tested on. But the reality? Real hospital systems don't hand the AI a perfect image. Actually, they hand it an exploded filing cabinet. A single patient's case might be this chaotic web of unorganized folder structures, raw data tables, and totally disconnected files. Expecting an AI to diagnose a patient without first knowing how to navigate that mess? Well, it's basically like asking a brilliant surgeon to operate without even telling them which hospital room the patient is in. Section 1. The Medical AI Illusion. Why Perfect Inputs Are a Myth. Here's the thing. Most existing medical AI tests evaluate the model's reasoning only after a human has perfectly curated all the data. Someone has already gone in, selected the files, cleaned them up, and perfectly paired them with the right questions. We're essentially testing the AI at the finish line, completely skipping the starting line. But as the researchers clearly state, real-world medical data are often messy, heterogeneous, and fragmented. Out there in a real clinic, a single patient sample doesn't just exist as one clean file. It relies on raw imaging files buried in one folder, maybe some segmentation masks drawn by a specialist sitting in another, a label table stored deep in a database, and clinical metadata hidden in some random text document. The links connecting all of those pieces are often just implicit, hidden in complex file naming conventions that a human researcher would normally have to manually piece together. Section 2. The Missing First Step. Or, as we like to call it, the filing cabinet problem. So, the crucial point is this. If an AI cannot open that filing cabinet, find the right folders, and organize the contents, its actual diagnostic capabilities are completely useless. Before an AI can even begin to act like a doctor, it first has to act like an expert data archivist. The researchers formally define this missing step as raw medical data standardization. Basically, that's the upstream process of identifying, aligning, and converting messy, real-world data into a unified, AI-ready representation. Before a vision language model can tell you if a tumor is present, it must first turn that chaotic folder of raw files into a standardized atomic unit. Typically, that means a VLM-ready visual image combined with a highly structured JSON file that contains all the correctly aligned annotations and metadata. To truly understand how difficult this is, just look at the standardization checklist an AI has to execute flawlessly just to prep a single medical file. First, it has to dig through directories to identify the relevant source files. Second, it has to convert raw, often proprietary, medical images into standard visual inputs. Third, it has to extract textual metadata and align it perfectly with the visual data. Fourth, it organizes all those results into a structured image and JSON pair. And finally, the big one, it must preserve the original medical semantics. Think about it. If an AI grabs a segmentation mask for the liver, but accidentally aligns it with a CT scan of the lungs, the downstream misdiagnosis would be catastrophic. There is absolutely zero room for error here. Section 3. Inside the MDS-Bench. The ultimate test for medical VLMs. To figure out if today's top AI models can actually handle this checklist, researchers built a grueling gauntlet. And this brilliantly illustrates how they pulled it off. For the MDS-Bench construction pipeline, they didn't just generate fake, easy data. They meticulously collected 100 representative raw medical imaging datasets directly from the real world. They manually traced target samples back through those messy, heterogeneous source files to find the original visual sources, the annotations, and the metadata. They used model-assisted extraction to draft the targets, sure, but they strictly enforced human verification to ensure the ground truth was perfectly aligned with the raw clinical resources. They literally built an arena that perfectly mimics the chaos of real hospital data systems. And the scope of this benchmark is massive. They annotated 1,939 specific standardization tasks. You can see the breakdown across 3 core task types. Segmentation makes up about 51% of the tasks. Classification is at roughly 43%, followed by detection. On top of that, the models had to handle a vast array of medical modalities. We are talking about 680 CT scans, hundreds of microscopy and pathology slides, MRIs, endoscopy, mammography, ultrasound data. The whole shebang. The AI really had to prove it could be a master organizer across virtually every discipline of modern medicine. But the medical discipline is only half the battle, right? The AI also had to navigate a totally chaotic mix of raw file formats. It faced 520 files from the TIFF family, 508 DICOM files, which, by the way, is a highly complex medical imaging standard packed with heavy metadata, and 380 files from the NIFTY family, which is used heavily in neuroimaging. So standardization here is not just a simple save as JPEG format conversion, not even close. It is a complex structural puzzle where the AI has to unpack specialized 3D volumetric data and extract the exact right 2D slice without breaking the clinical meaning. Section 4, the shocking AI report card. Let's look at how the world's top models actually performed. The researchers embedded the very best frontier agentic VLMs from Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI into a coding environment, handed them those raw dataset folders, and essentially said, okay, organize this. To grade them, they used 11 incredibly strict evaluation metrics. They measured things like structure to see if the JSON schema was valid, semantic correctness to ensure the AI didn't confuse a classification task with a segmentation task, and content fidelity to guarantee the metadata actually matched the image. But crucially, they measured what they called end-to-end strict pass. If the AI made even a single tiny mistake, grabbing the wrong source, misaligning the semantics, losing content fidelity anywhere in the pipeline, the entire task was marked as a failure. And under this strict, real-world scrutiny, the absolute best AI model in the world, Gemini 3 Flash, achieved an end-to-end success rate of just 48.6%. I really want you to let that sink in. The absolute most capable model on the market today, when asked to simply organize and standardize raw medical data before it even makes a diagnosis, failed more than half the time. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the broader landscape of those frontier models. Gemini 3 Flash leads the pack at that 48.6%. But look at the others. Claude Opus, 4.6, manages only 30%. GPT 5.2 is way down at 21%. This proves that we aren't just looking at a weird quirk of one specific model or company. This is a severe industry-wide bottleneck. Even if we look at the source content joint score, which is slightly more forgiving but still couples those key steps together, the absolute best score is barely above 56%. Literally every single top-tier model is struggling terribly with the messy reality of medical data logistics. To really understand why they are failing so badly, you have to look at how their capabilities break down. Most models are actually pretty good at the basic structural stuff, like generating a valid JSON format, they know how to write the code structure, but as you move into the more complex tasks, semantic alignment, content fidelity, and finally those strict joint scores, the performance just falls off a cliff. The AI can often solve individual, isolated parts of the task. It can read a file name, for sure, but medical standardization is a coupled pipeline. If the model generates a perfect JSON schema but accidentally pulls the metadata from patient B's file to attach to patient A's MRI, the error snowballs. The complete pipeline fails.
Section 5. Fixing the bottleneck. Where do we go from here?
Well, the researchers ran an ablation study to see if they could help the AI perform better through some advanced prompting and validation, basically giving it training wheels. Strategy S0 was just asking the AI to do the task directly, but then they tried adding support. S1 added self-refinement, where the AI checks its own work. S2 added verification-guided refinement. And S3 and S4 went even further, having the AI generate multiple different candidates and using a validator to actively select the best complete output or the best individual fields. They essentially built a rigorous multi-step checking system for the AI. The results? Well, those validation strategies certainly helped a bit. But even with all these advanced compute-heavy validation and candidate selection methods, the end-to-end success rate for the best model only climbed to 56%.
It's an improvement, for sure, but it is nowhere near the rock-solid reliability required to actually deploy this in a hospital. This highlights a critical truth. Clever prompting strategies do not eliminate the core bottleneck. The failure to standardize messy data is a fundamental weakness in current AI architecture that is going to require some deep, foundational improvements.
Let's move to what this actually means for us, because this stark reality builds a really clear roadmap. The path forward for medical AI requires a massive shift in perspective. First, we absolutely must acknowledge the messy data reality. The era of assuming perfectly clean inputs is over. Second, we have to start treating data standardization not as some boring afterthought, but as a core evaluative AI capability. Navigating the filing cabinet is literally just as important as reading the file inside it. And third, the industry has to stop relying solely on pre-cleaned benchmarks to declare models as medical experts. If a model hasn't been tested on raw, fragmented data, its real-world readiness is essentially zero. The researchers summarize this entire dilemma perfectly in their conclusion. They state, raw medical data standardization is a critical bottleneck for medical AI diagnosis in real practice. That right there is the central thesis you should take away from this explainer. The unglamorous, tedious work of data logistics, matching the right mask to the right scan, reading the correct metadata table, navigating raw folders, that is the actual frontier of medical AI right now. We all want a future where AI can instantly and accurately help diagnose complex illnesses, saving time and ultimately saving lives. But to get there, we absolutely have to solve this missing first step. So I leave you with this thought. Before AI can step in to cure us, who is going to step in and cure the AI's data problem? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. It's an absolutely fascinating challenge, and the race to solve it is going to shape the entire future of healthcare technology.